What on earth is going on in the bond markets, and what exactly do we mean when we say that trillions of dollars worth of bonds are trading with negative yields? Honestly, it's pretty complicated, but there is a basic rule to remember. When bond prices go up, the yield, or the return the buyer earns on that bond, goes down. Bond prices up, yields down. Now, a government or a company issues a bond because they want to borrow money. An investor buys the bond, gives the government cash, and in return gets paid a fixed sum of money, interest, every year. Now, at the end of the life of the bond, the government then gives all that cash back, 100% of the money they initially borrowed. We call that capital protected. The interest the government pays is pretty low right now, but generally it pays better than keeping the cash in a savings account, for example. Now, bond prices spike higher when investors get nervous and turn to what we call safe havens. The question is, why are government bonds seen as safe assets? Well, the belief is that if all else fails, a sovereign nation like the United States will still honor its commitment. But since the financial crisis, something unique has been occurring. Two things, in fact, have been driving bond prices up and therefore yields down. Number one, ordinary investors are not the only ones who've been buying bonds. Central banks like the Bank of Japan, the Eurozone, and the Federal Reserve Central Bank have all been buying too. Now, number two, central banks have been cutting interest rates as well. Over in places like the Eurozone, Switzerland, Japan, just to name a few, central banks have cut rates to zero and then kept cutting, all the way into negative territory to try and help support their economies. In a nutshell, what has that done? It means lots of bonds around the world are trading with negative interest rates or yields. This means the buyer of a bond today with a negative interest rate is effectively paying global governments and/or companies for the privilege of lending the money. Sounds crazy? Yep, it's pretty crazy. And that's what the world looks like today, to the tune of multiple trillions of dollars worth of bonds. The question is, why should we care? Well, for one, we don't know where this ends. While low rates are good for borrowers, low rates are bad for savers. Longer term, low rates make it harder for money managers like big pension funds to earn cash. Therefore, they're forced to buy riskier products, putting our future retirement money at greater risk.
What would happen in a no-deal Brexit? No one knows. The options are so many, the hardships will be great. Firstly, the freedom of movement will go. People will not be allowed to move, live and work in each other's countries, Britain and the European Union, freely. Secondly, you won't be able to do free trade between them anymore. Britain will no longer be part of the single market. So there'll be long lines at customs and ports as goods have to be checked for rules of origin, for tariffs. Oh yes, tariffs! There'll be tariffs between the UK and the EU. It will be a 180-degree turn from the current situation. But the good news would be, and it's only very minor, is that the EU and the UK would put together emergency measures. So flights would be able to continue, regulations would allow it, certain limited regulations would be put in place for essential goods. That's it. No one knows. I promise you, if there was a no-deal Brexit, everyone agrees it would be messy in the extreme.
Why is Kashmir such a big deal? Because nuclear-armed rivals, India and Pakistan, have been fighting over it for more than 70 years. Both claim the region in its entirety. India currently controls around 45% of Kashmir's territory, and Pakistan controls about 35%. China controls the rest. So how did we get here? The troubles began in 1947, when India and Pakistan gained independence from Great Britain. Kashmir initially remained independent, but later its ruler signed a letter acceding to India, sparking a war with Pakistan. War broke out again in 1965 and again in 1971. Even after both India and Pakistan became nuclear powers, border clashes continued, including notably in 1999, when violence stopped short of a full-scale war. The flashpoint remains the heavily militarized line of control, which divides the Pakistani and Indian-controlled regions of Kashmir. Indian-controlled Kashmir experiences regular unrest and protests, which has at times been met with brutal army and paramilitary force. Tensions flared up again in mid-February when a suicide car bomb killed at least 37 Indian paramilitary troops in Kashmir. India claimed Pakistan was supporting terror groups behind the attack, which Pakistan denied. Almost 2 weeks later, Pakistan shot down an Indian Air Force jet and captured its pilot during a dogfight. He was eventually released from Pakistani custody in a dramatic nighttime handover. In August, the Indian government deployed tens of thousands of troops to Indian-controlled Kashmir and placed Kashmiri political leaders under house arrest. Then it stripped Indian-administered Kashmir of its special status under the Indian constitution. This status gave Kashmir a great deal of autonomy. Pakistan, quote, strongly condemned the move. Relations between the two countries will continue to ebb and flow. But Kashmir is sure to be a thorn in the side of relations between India and Pakistan for the foreseeable future.